Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something we're calling the unending game. It's this incredibly complex world of spies, secrets, intelligence, and, well, the huge challenges countries face with just so much information flying around.
Yeah, the sources we've dug into for this are, frankly, massive. We're talking everything from old school spy stories, the human element, to the really heavy stuff like nuclear proliferation, how terror gets funded, modern digital surveillance, and, maybe much importantly, why intelligence sometimes just fails.
And our goal here really is to cut through all that complexity, to give you a shortcut sort of to understanding these hidden forces. We're not just looking at what happened, but digging into the why. Why does this stuff matter? And how do these threads from the past keep showing up today? Exactly. Because behind all the tech and the grand strategy, it often comes down to people. So let's start there. With some of these individual spies whose actions really did change things. Okay, take George Koval. Born in Iowa, believe it or not, dies quietly in Moscow, 2006. Then, boom, 2007. Putin gives him the Hero of Russia medal posthumously.
Wow.
Yeah. And here's the kicker. He was apparently the only Soviet agent to get inside the Manhattan Project, the U.S. atomic bomb program. And he significantly sped up the Soviets getting their own bomb. A perfect spy, you could say.
And that just perfectly sums up the Cold War context, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Espionage wasn't just a sideshow. It was central. Part of this bigger ideological fight played out through spy agencies, proxy conflicts, all that.
Right.
And figures like Koval, driven by ideology, they were heroes if they succeeded. If not, forgotten. But then there's the other side of it, the paranoia about spying.
Oh, yeah. Which leads us straight to James Jesus Angleton. Head of CIA counterintelligence for, 20 years, 54 to 74?
Yeah.
And he gets this idea, partly from a defector, Golitsyn, about a KGB monster plan. He starts thinking every Soviet defector is actually a plant sent to fool the CIA.
Right.
This suspicion just grinds their Soviet operations to a halt, ruins the careers of maybe 50 loyal officers, just devastating internal damage.
It's incredible, isn't it? The damage done by the fear of infiltration might have been worse than any actual infiltration at that point. You have to wonder. Was that the real KGB masterstroke, sowing so much distrust that the CIA basically tied its own hands?
A chilling thought. And then sometimes the motive isn't grand ideology at all. It's just money. Like John Walker.
Yeah.
That's in 1964, he just walks into the Soviet embassy, says, I want to sell secrets. And he does.
Right.
For nearly 20 years. Gives them like 1 million classified messages.
1 million.
Details on the entire U.S. Atlantic Fleet, B-52 missions, everything. A top KGB guy later called it the most spectacular case in America. Pure greed.
It shows that duality, doesn't it? Ideology versus cash. And Walker reminds us, too, that even the best intelligence, sometimes it gets ignored. Think about Richard Sorge in Japan.
Oh, Sorge. Yeah. USSR's man in Tokyo.
Right. Deep cover, member of the Nazi Party, close to the German ambassador. He sends Stalin a crystal clear warning. Hitler's going to invade the Soviet Union, and Stalin just dismisses it contemptuously. Sorge ends up executed by the Japanese.
Unbelievable. Having the intel but not acting on it, which maybe brings us to the state level, the hunt for nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Pakistan's story here is, well, it's quite something.
It really is.
So after the 71 war with India, Pakistan's leader, Zulfikar Bhutto, described as pretty ruthless, arrogant maybe more, he immediately starts pushing for a bomb. Sources suggest he kind of played the Islamic card, getting funds from Libya, Iran, Saudi Arabia. The goal seemed to be making Pakistan the leader of the Muslim world armed with nuclear weapons.
And India's intelligence agency, RNAW, they knew immediately. Their assessment was stark. Another deadlier war was about to begin. So the race was on to figure out what Pakistan was up to, how they were getting the materials, the know-how. Agents were looking everywhere. The thought of Iran and Pakistan working together on this kept people up at night.
And the key figure in actually getting the stuff was A.Q. Khan, became a national hero, the savior of Pakistan.
Right.
France initially agreed to sell them a plutonium reprocessing plant.
Right.
But the U.S. leaned on them hard, and they backed out in 78. So Pakistan just switched gears, went for uranium enrichment instead.
And this is where it gets interesting how they actually got the parts. It wasn't super secret spy stuff, a lot of it. It was exploiting free markets, legal loopholes.
How so?
Well, A.Q. Khan got hold of centrifuge designs, enrichment tech from the Netherlands, partly because security was apparently pretty lax. Then they just bought specialized steel tubes, rotors, openly, in Holland. Yeah. German firms sold them vacuum pumps. Swiss companies sold special valves because technically they weren't on the restricted trigger list for nuclear items.
Oh.
British front companies were used to order things like high-frequency inverters. It was basically capitalism doing its thing, finding ways around the rules or interpreting them very liberally. Profit was the motive for the suppliers.
And the U.S., what was their take on all this?
Well, ambivalent is a good word. You had Brzezinski, Carter's national security advisor, saying in '79 that, look, fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan is more important right now than Pakistan's nuclear program. Our security policy can't be dictated by non-proliferation concerns.
So strategic trade-off.
Exactly. And Reagan kept certifying to Congress that Pakistan didn't have a bomb, even as they clearly were building one. The Afghan war effort took precedence.
Which effectively gave A.Q. Khan room to operate.
It did. And it led to what some called as international nuclear Walmart in the 80s. He wasn't just building Pakistan's bomb. He started selling the tech. North Korea, Libya, and financing a lot of this murky activity. You had banks like BCCI, the Bank of Credit and Commerce International.
Ah, BCCI. That name rings a bell.
Yeah.
Very shady reputation.
Extremely. Involved in financing Pakistan's nuclear buys, funding the Afghan jihad for the CIA, money laundering. A real nexus of illicit finance and state-sponsored covert ops.
Okay, so that brings us to this messy overlap. State intelligence, crime, terrorism, especially the money. It all gets tangled up, doesn't it?
It really does, a very tangled web.
Look at the Mumbai bombings in 1993. Horrific attacks. Carried out by a notorious gangster, Dawood Ibrahim and his mafia, but sponsored, armed, and trained by Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI. They provided the RDX explosives, the training. Dawood's smuggling network moved the stuff. It's that perfect, terrible example. Terror, crime, and state intelligence all working together.
And that's why intelligence agencies focus so hard on the cash nexus, following the money. Because terrorist groups, like any organization, need funds to operate. Weapons, recruitment, planning. It all costs money.
Right.
If you can cut off the money supply, you can seriously hurt them. Although sometimes the cost asymmetry is just staggering. Al-Qaeda spent maybe $500,000 on 9/11.
Is that right? Only $500K?
Around that, yeah. But the U.S. response, the global war on terror, cost something like $5 trillion by 2011. The asymmetry is huge.
Wow. And the Afghan jihad itself, you mentioned the funding. U.S., Saudi, Chinese, British money pouring in to fight the Soviets via Pakistan.
Right. But alongside that official funding, you had massive profits from heroin smuggling, funding of the war too, and BCCI, that bank we mentioned. Apparently it was CIA Director Casey's favorite bank for moving black budget money, funding arms deals, and, facilitating that heroin trade. Some argue morals were sacrificed to win the Cold War battle in Afghanistan.
And tracking terror money now is still incredibly hard.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Money laundering techniques are sophisticated. Small deposits, wire transfers hopping across borders, buying property, shell companies, and then there's the Hawala system.
Voila.
It's an informal money transfer system based on trust, no electronic records, no paper trail, perfect for criminals and terrorists moving money illicitly, often linked to, say, selling opium from Afghanistan to buy weapons.
And even currency itself gets weaponized.
Yeah.
The counterfeit Indian rupees. Pakistan's ISI making huge profits from that.
Estimates are around 500 crore rupees a year, yeah. Basically making Indians pay for the terror aimed against them. It's part of why India did that big demonetization in 2016, trying to disrupt those fake currency networks.
Okay, so from physical cash and bombs, let's shift to the digital world, the ether, the new intelligence battleground, which means surveillance. Lots of it.
An explosion of it, really.
You had the Five Eyes Alliance, US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, started in the Cold War, focused on the Soviets and China. But the sources show they kind of bent the rules to spy on each other's citizens, too. Famous names come up: Charlie Chaplin, John Lennon, even allies like Angela Merkel or figures like Nelson Mandela. It became incredibly broad.
And the technology driving this. Operation Echelon started back in the 70s, coordinating global signals intelligence, basically eavesdropping between the Five Eyes. But then came programs like PRISM, massively upgraded capability. The idea seemed to be sweeping up everything everywhere about everyone. And this relied on cooperation from governments in Europe and, critically, from major U.S. tech and telecom companies.
Which brings us to Edward Snowden.
Snowden, yeah. former NSA contractor. In 2013, he leaks huge amounts of classified information about PRISM, about the Five Eyes spying, showed the world the sheer scale of this global surveillance machine.
Divisive figure, obviously. Critics call him a traitor. Right. He says he did it because it was a massive violation of privacy rights.
And one really crucial thing his leaks highlighted was the role of private companies. After 9/11, the U.S. intelligence budget almost doubled. But something like 70% of the work got outsourced.
70%. To who?
Big contractors, Lockheed Martin, IBM, Booz Allen Hamilton, where Snowden worked. This whole private cyber intelligence ruling class basically doing government spying work, but for profit, even scraping data en masse from social networks.
Which shines a light on big tech itself, doesn't it? Google, Facebook, LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Google's model. You're not the customer, you're the product being sold to advertisers. They merge data from search, maps, email, voice commands, building these incredibly detailed profiles.
And LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Their privacy policy is something else.
It's pretty breathtaking, yeah. You basically grant them irrevocable, worldwide, perpetual rights to copy, analyze, commercialize pretty much any information you put on there without any further consent or payment to you. You wonder how many people actually read that before clicking agree.
And Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg famously said, privacy isn't the social norm anymore, while spending $30 million buying houses around his own for his privacy.
The irony isn't lost, is it? And beyond the household names, there's this whole data surveillance industry in the U.S., worth maybe $156 billion a year. That's almost double the official U.S. intelligence budget. Companies like Axiom, Epsilon, vacuuming up data on citizens, largely outside of direct government oversight, it seems.
And let's not forget things like extraordinary rendition after 9/11.
Right, the torture taxis, flying suspects to countries known for enhanced interrogation techniques, bypassing U.S. legal constraints.
It all comes back to that core dilemma, doesn't it? Security versus liberty. How much freedom, how much privacy are we willing to give up for safety? You expect surveillance in dictatorships, but it's maybe more jarring when it's democracies with constitutions guaranteeing freedoms that engage in full-spectrum surveillance.
It's the fundamental question in this whole domain.
Okay, but here's the thing. Despite all this money, all this tech, all this surveillance, intelligence failures still happen. Big ones.
They do. And often the key takeaway is that they're systemic failures, not just one person messing up.
Systemic how? What are the common problems?
Well, the list is long. Sometimes you just don't have the spies or the access you need. Sometimes the analysis is wrong, analysts have biases, or they misread things. Sometimes agencies just don't talk to each other, poor coordination.
Right.
Or you can't translate or decrypt the intercepts fast enough. Or the people receiving the intelligence misunderstand it. Or worse, they ignore it for political reasons. Sometimes it's just sheer incompetence. And often it's a mix of these. It also explains why slow burn crises are hard to spot. People get used to small changes, like that frog in boiling water idea.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's look at a specific tragic example, Rajiv Gandhi's assassination in 1991.
A terrible case.
Intelligence existed. Intercepted messages from the LTTE rebels explicitly talked about planning to blow Rajiv Gandhi's head off.
Joke.
But political factors were huge. The new prime minister, VP Singh, had removed Gandhi's high-level SPG security cover out of peak, basically. There was a general dismissal of threat warnings from RNAW, and crucially, the agencies weren't coordinated. The Intelligence Bureau had the intercepts but couldn't break the Tamil codes quickly. RNAW could break the codes, but they weren't the ones intercepting those specific messages in Tamil Nadu.
A complete disconnect, with fatal consequences.
Then there's 9/11, described as a colossal failure, a failure of imagination.
Mm-hmm. Hard to believe now, but the idea of using planes as missiles against iconic buildings just wasn't really considered plausible by the higher-ups.
And the tech echelon, the NSA system, actually did pick up some indications of a major attack beforehand.
It did, using AI analysis of intercepts. But those warnings, flagged by the machine, apparently weren't looked at by a human analyst until after the planes hit.
So the intelligence was there, technically, but ignored. Or maybe, as some reports say, there was a failure to accept that there was intelligence. And some critics connect this back to the Afghan jihad, calling 911 blowback from supporting the Mujahideen against the Soviets, that whole Brzezinski doctrine.
Right. Brzezinski himself was apparently unrepentant later, saying collapsing the Soviet Union was more important than worrying about some stirred-up Muslims or the Taliban, a very cold calculation.
And even after 9/11, lessons weren't fully learned. Mumbai, 2008.
Another systemic failure. Tragically similar mistakes. There were warnings going back to 2006 that Lashkar-e-Taiba was training commandos for seaborne attacks, specifically targeting Mumbai.
2 years beforehand.
Yes. Even open-source reporting, like on CNN IBN in 2007, mentioned hundreds receiving Marine training, and that 2 suspects caught with Indian IDs were mysteriously let go. But again, no one connected the dots at the top levels.
And then during the attack itself,
Mhm.
live TV broadcasts.
Gave the terrorists real-time tactical information from their handlers in Pakistan, telling them where the security forces were moving, just compounded the tragedy.
So wrapping this all up,
Yeah.
we've covered a lot of ground. Individual spies, nuclear proliferation, terror financing, mass surveillance, intelligence failures. It's a disquieting picture, isn't it? This unending game just keeps getting more complex.
It does. And the future challenges look even harder. AI-powered weapons, maybe. Blockchain making money, tracking even tougher. Cyber warfare escalating, terror groups becoming more globalized, more networked. That fundamental tension, freedom versus security, it just doesn't go away.
It seems like while states pour billions into the tech side, maybe the biggest challenge remains human. The willingness to actually listen to uncomfortable intelligence, for agencies to cooperate to put national security ahead of politics or bureaucratic turf wars, to try and understand the adversary, not just surveil them.
That's often the hardest part.
So the final thought for you listening. In this endless high-stakes game, navigating that line between our own privacy and our collective security, what's our responsibility as citizens? What stands out most starkly to Wyoa from all this?